Since Ross Lally chaired the Finance Committee, calling our special meeting to order at 7:17 p.m. And we have present in the room Finance Committee members, myself, Ross Lally, Chair, Tyler, Member at Large, Robert Mora, who is a member from the Board of Selectmen, Amanda Gordon, who is a member from the Board of Selectmen, Ashley Phelan, member from Board of Ed, and Rhea Klein, member from Board of Ed. And I do not see Mr. Chris out there in the audience, so we have one of our members is missing. And then also present in the room, David Caruso, who is up to be the new superintendent of schools. We have some members of the public. We have Rodney Fournier, first selectman.
We need to change the view. It's not showing everybody that's on. The gallery.
Let's try that and see what happens. There we go. And then we also have other members of, we have Jill Collins, finance CFO for the town. We have Mary, our clerk, James Rupert, town administrator, and various other members, it looks like, of Board of Ed. We have Kristen Heck, current superintendent of schools, who's also out there. So meeting is called to order. The first item on our agenda is public participation. I will start with the folks who are in the room, and if you would come up, if you would like to participate, please come up. If you have anything to say, state your name and address for the record, and comments.
Okay. My name is Krista Karen, 72 Mount Sumner Drive.
Krista Karen,
Kerin.
Kerin, thank you. And 72 Mount Sumner.
Yeah. I was wondering how many children we have currently in the school system that breakout is?
Now, I guess that would be a question for the superintendent of schools, if she is available to answer that.
I'm looking up the exact number right now.
And you're meaning as of the end of the end of the current year, or do you mean next?
I mean, say it right.
It changes from year to year. So I just was curious if you want last year, the current end year that just ended, or
Whatever she has access to would be great.
probably both.
Want to mute?
So you that.
One of the men.
That. Is that Kristen?
No.
She's up there.
Our enrollment is around 683 and our projected, hang on, sorry, I got to, wait a minute. Nope. Yep. Okay. Our enrollment is around 694 right now.
And what's that for high school and middle school or elementary?
Sure. So elementary pre-K to 5, it's 314. And for 6 through 8, 162, and the high school 218.
I guess that's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, no other questions from the public in the room. Is there anybody online who would like to speak? And it's I believe *6 to unmute yourself.
Oh,
What, another question from the public?
I'm sorry, but what has been the trajectory of the children, projected children? Are we gaining children or are we losing?
Come back up.
Here.
So the numbers that I read you are our projected enrollment for 10-1-25, which is a little bit more than what we currently have at 683. So we're sitting at 683 and we're projecting 694 for the 25-26 school year.
We're pretty much staying the same.
That's in the Board of Ed budget document, which is on the
It is.
website.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So I am not seeing anybody raising hands online or anybody muting wishes to speak. That being the case, we will go on to approval of the minutes of our special meeting of May 21. All of which is the prelude to all the fun we're gonna have with item number 5. Bob, you had a question?
Yeah, I do have a question, and I'm sorry, this is under 4D. It's the second paragraph next to the last sentence, which says, J. Rupert stated, these changes would be reductions in the capital budget for a total of 158. I believe the capital budget reduction was 58, and the other 100,000 was out of the town budget, which is indicated, where it's
In 4B.
yeah. So I make that just should make that correction. I'm assuming that's, and I missed that part of the conversation, but I'm assuming that's what was supposed to be there, 58,000 for out of capital.
Where were you making the correction to? I just couldn't follow.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't find.
Where are you?
4D.
There's no 4D.
Oops. You mean D or?
4B, I think.
Oh, yeah,
Second
the second
paragraph.
paragraph of 4B.
Bottom of that paragraph, there's a 158.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. It should be split out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have the air conditioner blowing my ears, so I.
Full screen. Under 3B.
Yeah.
There was a correction to the name Filaramo, which is to Silaramo, but it's Filaramo with an F, not an S. F as in, I don't know. Fight.
Bunny, fox?
I'm not up on the.
Then it looks like, for the, just an incorrection, there's page Jessica Saffron, and then in 2 is Jessica SEA,
Which, where are you, sir?
the first page.
Number 2.
Number Jessica Saffron, and then, it's above there, it says others present via town hall, Jessica Saffron, I just don't know which is the correct spell.
Give me a minute, I can find it. She wrote a letter to the Board of Selectmen, I think.
Okay.
Was that last meeting?
Yeah, the one I read.
Yeah, well, one of the ones.
Anything else? So you want to make somebody, I'll entertain a motion to approve with the corrections noted.
Also move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's a motion made by Robert Moore, seconded by Leah Fine. Any further discussion? Seeing none in the room, I will ask all voting members to signify their preference. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So no abstentions. I'm not voting, so don't have to abstain. And no nays, so it passes unanimously by the voting members present. So we can continue on to our ongoing discussion of the revenues and expenditures and see if there's anything of note at this point. And I don't believe there are. That's for 24 or 25. And anything new on 25 or 26?
Is that Jill's, excuse me, is that Jill's barn?
Jill, we're about the same, correct?
I'm sorry? for the revenue for 25?
25, we're about the same, correct, right now?
Approximate, there is another $55,013 that if you choose to revise the revenues, we can do that.
55,013.
And that's from taxes?
No,
No?
some taxes, some, building officials, some, interest. We're at 505 for interest. I believe you had 480. I believe you were 480. And there was a decrease in the adult education state money that we received. We've received the final payment for that. So the total of all the different revenues equaled 55,013.
55013.
Correct.
Okay, so that'll help inform on our next question. Unless anybody has any further questions for Jill. So I guess I would we'll go on to 4C, which is consider.
We want to ask if either board has additional cuts to expenditures for.
I was going to just consider that under the ballot question now,
Oh,
because that's where we would typically have that discussion and see what there's new, because we just recognize the revenue and then we have to go into what the, the ballot question is.
We might need to, yeah.
What?
you need to act on that revenue if we want to recognize it.
Oh, okay, good point. Thank you. So the note, do I have a motion to recognize the additional revenue of $55,013 that Jill just identified
For FY 25.
for FY 25?
So moved.
I'll second.
So moved by, Ashley Phelan, seconded by Amanda Gordon. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously by all voting members. So then we can use that to inform some of our discussion on item number C on our ballot question. And I will just tell you for like the feedback that I received, it's just like we've got a choice of you either put your foot down and say $1, you make substantial cuts because the margins stayed the same with the voting. It's still 2-1. We got 100 more people who came, about 100 and change more people came to vote, but the percentages still stayed the same.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment and I'm going to present a motion for discussion.
Yes, sir.
Comment. And this based upon what we saw, we all saw the results, which were pretty similar to what, in fact, they were worse than the first go around, which tells us that a major reduction is the only way this is going to pass. So what is that magic number? That's always the key. So I am going to put forward the bracket where I think that falls like between $300,000 and $400,000 in additional amount to be reduced. That good news of the 55,000 that's great. That can be factored in. So what I want to do tonight, quite honestly, I'm going to present you with a worst case scenario motion that will piss off everybody. Okay, I know that's short term, I'm sorry, but would be upsetting because no, we need to start with what I think is the worst case scenario and then bring that down to where we can make this thing work. My worst case scenario motion would be a reduction right now at 55 from the Board of Ed budget of 350,000. That would leave about only about 100,000 over the minimum that's required by the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So that's, so everybody should understand that.
Yeah.
What this means, it means that the state of Connecticut, which the rules that we are governed by, says that you must increase that budget by at least 0.5%. And by making this reduction, that brings it to an increase of about 1%. And that is, I don't want to use the word catastrophic, but that is a significant move. So with that said, I would move that reduction for discussion purposes, that the Board of Education's budget be reduced by 350.
Your budget has.
Has to. I think-
It's not a reduction of the
No.
budget, it's a
No,
reduction.
the budget
of your
has. Thank you, sir.
I have a second,
Second.
so seconded by Tyler Egner. Discussion.
So I can follow that up with, because I'd like feedback from the Board of Ed members on this thing, as well as with the other members. That's my thoughts on this thing. And there's no question, if you listen to folks who spoke out there, that portion of the budget was a significant concern. One. Two, I also know that we have to provide sufficient funds for our school systems to function. And what I'm saying now is, what I'm proposing is that's it. I mean, for that system to function, it's gonna require some adjustments, no question. But, just my thoughts are, and that's gonna be a hard job, no doubt. And I don't see how it could go forward with anything greater than that. So with that, that's my thoughts.
All I will just pass on is I have the same feedback when my other hat I wear as a registrar of voters, I was at the polls, and that's a lot of the feedback that I got, the dissatisfaction. There's still the usual, they feel we're hiding money someplace. And the other part is, we've already talked about that. And the other part is just with the dissatisfaction with the continuing increases of the school budget with, with never recognizing all the increased student attendance we were expecting from Columbia and other schools, which is why some of the additions and changes were made to the school buildings. So that is a sore point. It's, comes up very consistently. And the other point some people asked too was, and again, they specifically asked me to bring this here because they wouldn't be here. So don't shoot me for saying it. It's just what they said. They wanted to really just feel that the Board of Ed was listening to them and hearing that, nothing has happened despite all the promises. We're not getting more students. They wanted to see what the Board of Ed could do with changes, like why do we need a superintendent full-time as opposed to sharing a superintendent with other schools? Sorry, David, I'm just passing on. And the other thing that, came up, that was one, they also wanted to know, why do we need a principal for Bolton Center School and a vice principal? And the same thing over at the high school, could we not have, one principal doing both schools and a vice principal? And the same thing with reducing of the administrative staff so that it's shared between the two schools. So again, I'm just, passing on what I've heard. And then some people also did pick up on some of the comments that I made at the last meeting. So it shows they weren't here, but they go and read the minutes afterwards. It's actually that fellow, David Michaud. He said that at his school, he feels there's too many administrators. He's a teacher. He feels that's an area for reduction. He also likes some of the ideas of what other services can we share between the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen, such as whether it is like payroll systems, whether it is an accounting department, whether it's the motor pool or whatever, so that you can basically reduce the total amount people needed or vehicles needed for each area while still providing the appropriate services. So I'm just, passing that on. They asked me to pass it on. So it's not my comment. It's what, other people ask me to, please forward for them. And I know they're going to be listening. So I wanted to make sure that I do so.
Yeah, so I'd say I really appreciate the feedback. This is kind of the feedback that we're looking for people to come out and share. We have a new set of eyes, coming in, really appreciate everything Kristen's done for us. Sometimes you need, a fresh set of eyes to come in and perform an assessment. Dave's coming from a new school system. Maybe he has ideas on things that were done differently there. I'd say give us a little bit of time to do that full assessment. I think it's warranted to take out a bit. I think last meeting I had proposed, sorry, Amanda, I'd be comfortable with maybe 200,000 coming from Board of Ed. Do I know exactly where that would come from? No, but I would think, my thoughts were there's probably some, shared services that probably could be streamlined and realized. I don't think all of it comes from Board of Ed though. When you share those services, you're gonna have some coming from the town as well. So I asked the Board of Selectmen side to partner in that cost sharing with the Board of Ed. So I really do think that there's some opportunities there for sure.
It's almost like you'd have to move those services up to it's a shared pool.
Yeah.
That's part of, it's not part of the selectmen's budget directly. It's not part of Board of Ed, but it's a shared resource for both of them that you can watch, very clearly see the size of and understand, that what it's being used for both. So it does effectively reduce the Board of Selectmen spending as well.
I'm sorry, Amanda.
No, I wasn't.
No, all right, so we'll say 200.
Let's have some, before you.
No, okay, yeah.
You want to change your motion or you want to hear what anybody else has to say? Because Rhea hasn't commented, Tyler hasn't commented, Amanda really hasn't. So I'd just like to make sure that, we hear what they have to say and, everybody gets heard on this. Yes, Rhea.
I agree that we have to make a bigger cut than we would like to, for sure. I don't agree that it should be all from the Board of Ed. I think a lot of them aren't the funds that the revenues that were lacking, that we didn't get this year, more on the Board of Selectmen, and then the school the grants and things like that.
So the biggest hit to our revenue was $750,000 that we're not getting from the state, which is a result of the difference between our mill rate and the car tax mill rate being much lower this year than it was in the past. So we got that funding because of the gap between those two. And because we lowered our mill rate as a result of the revaluation, we are being penalized by the state in terms of the revenue that we are getting. And it went from 750 down to 17.
And since that's kind of basically applies to all of
The whole
the
budget.
whole budget proportionate to the size of their budget.
Sure. Yeah.
I was going to bring up the other thing too, I want to finish the discussion of this. Because I think this is a standalone topic and then we can move on because I have some other notes about, our dental plan money that's sitting around, also about LoSiP, which is the local capital improvements grants that we get from the state. Did we fully move all of those around that we could to cover capital expenses? And then, we can get to if there's any other additional savings that the Board of Selectmen might be able to realize. So I want to finish this discussion and then we can move on to, the others.
Ask a question.
Yes.
How would that, a cut of 400, for example, affect the mill rate? Because that's what everybody's.
Ms. Collins.
I'm sorry. A cut of 400,000, what,
If we reduce the current the total ask from the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed by $400,000, is that what you want to know? The total ask by 400,000?
Yes.
what does she want to know?
She just wants to know what would happen to the mill rate if we reduce the total budget ask by.
By 400,000, it would be, the mill rate would be, if we cut it now, from the numbers we went into the last referendum, it would be 3304 would be the mill rate.
And what was it for the referendum? Sorry.
3377, I believe.
Yeah, that's.
Was that the adopted or the,
The proposed, That was the
Yeah.
proposed budget, no, that was the 3274 was the adopted for last year. And it would be 3304 for the 400,000, which would be an increase of 0.30 mils.
Over the adopted
3%.
mill.
3%.
Correct. Did that answer your question, Rhea?
3% increase. Okay.
No,
Over the adopted,
no,
but
it's not a 3% increase. It's a,
everyone's using the 30.8.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
yeah,
if
what
we
would
could-
that be?
Because I know you and I talked about using that number too, Jill, so I think you had that.
I don't have that. I can figure it out for you if you give me a second. I didn't have time to do it to that number. Give me 1 second.
Well,
3304.
right. 3.04 minus 30.8. Divided by 38. Oh, what's that?
Like 7%.
Down from 9.5.
It's not. Is it really 7? I was thinking it would be 5.
5 what? Percent?
Yeah.
No, 7 sounds right, yeah.
7%.
Because we did go from.
We cut-
12.07.
What?
You started from almost 30.
2,000 last time and it reduced by 3.
Okay.
So we're at 9.5 and we've reduced by about the same amount. We're down by another 3.
Yeah.
So
So it is a 7.13% increase and 2.2 mils.
So as it relates to the Board of Education budget, I think the Board of Ed does need to take a look, and the superintendent, right, need to take a look at administrative options. I would say doing it by cutting the budget right now could have devastating impacts for our school system, because something like that you need to plan for.
You're not cutting it though. You're reducing their ask, you're not
Right.
cutting their
Okay,
budget.
so, right, so if we reduce their ask and they ultimately decide to use such a cut to eliminate administrators to the extent that's being discussed without a significant plan in place, I worry about what that
Well,
does to the whole school system. I think we need
already
to be
took a
planful.
really hard look at it, recently when the dean of students role, and that was.
And we deleted,
and that was-
eliminated the
that was
dean of students.
Correct,
Yeah.
so.
And I agree with you, Amanda, but I have not, in all the years I've been on here, seen any sense of urgency within the Board of Education to do any of this. I see a panic now, but I have never seen any sense of urgency where they've come forward and say, let's meet with the selectmen, let's go and do this. I have seen, when I've asked about it, I have been told you can't do that. And it's happened at these meetings, and it's just always what you can't do as opposed to what can we do. And I just do not personally, again, I can't vote and tell you my opinion. I have not seen a sense of urgency to do any of this stuff. And I don't see where that's suddenly going to appear unless they have an incentive, because even though you have a new superintendent, you have the same people on the Board of Ed. And so that's the only reason I would say I don't want to back away from this, because if you do, you're going to wind up back here again for a 4th time, and then we're going to still have to do some cuts. So
It's not to say we won't have to be back here at 4th time anyways.
we might still be. So that's why I wanted on the agenda to talk about that. So, people know what's coming, because we usually don't. And I don't like the way that we do it, because people don't understand that what's going to happen the next time if we reduce it, because what's happened in the past, we've always cut this. After, 2 or 3 or 4 times, life goes on, nothing drastically changes in the town. So I think that they're used to seeing this. And it's just going to keep going until, something either breaks or you guys put your foot down and say, this is the end of it. After this, it's $1, because this is all. And if we do any more, it's cutting our noses off to spite our faces. And no one has ever either really had to cut anything important, and nobody has ever said, we always come into these meetings, this is the best budget we can do. And then we immediately cave and we cut it back. And so people expect that. And so I don't know, if we keep doing it the same way, we're gonna keep getting the same results.
Ross, could I speak?
Yes,
With all due respect, there have been cuts on the Board of Education side that have impacted students. We lost world language up through the elementary schools. That was a huge hit for the district. We had a year where we had 2 sections of kindergarten and large class sizes. And parents were adamant that they did not want that to move forward. And we added back a teacher. We eliminated or reduced positions last year at the high school to address enrollment and the cuts that happened. So while I hear your concern, I want to make it very clear that there have been cuts over the years that have adversely impacted education in the community of Bolton, and people need to be aware of that. Thank you.
And I'd also say that I don't think we've had any cuts that have impacted, directly impacted, residents either. Have we ever pulled back on services where people feel what it really likes, what it means to do services? We haven't.
no, that's what I'm saying. On
Yeah.
both sides, nothing substantive on both sides has ever been cut. For example, guess what? You're gonna go hire your own trash collection now. Or guess what? We're not gonna clean up after storms as much. And then that screws the schools as well as the general population because you can't get students to schools, in time. So that's why I'm saying at a certain point, everybody really either sticks to their guns and says, this is the end, it's only $1, because that's, we have to reduce, or you make some substantive cuts that people understand. And then you just say, I'm done at this point. We're not going any further. I really don't know, because we keep doing things the same way and the same things happen and nobody's happy. And I'm just gonna say that I do not see the concern from the PTO this time because the ratio stayed the same of the voting. Because when we've had the PTO get out the vote in the past, we passed that budget in one vote. And so they don't seem to be that concerned this time around because the ratio has stayed the same with the vote.
Deanna's on.
So I'm just saying,
Deanna's on the line.
I'm making the comment based on the votes, so somebody can, if they want to refute that.
Fair comment.
Just here.
Yes,
No, me.
No,
Yes, sir. That's the problem, it's in the corner. But just, I want to comment on, I wanted to get input from our Board of Ed members based upon, where we're going with this thing. So I appreciate your comment, also the superintendent's comments, worked a lot of years the school system. I don't want to destroy the school system and no this to anyone else. I think we want to be upfront with the voting public, is that there's a number here. If you go beyond it, you're as Kristen indicated, I think as our new superintendent would indicate, that it will have devastating effect on programming and
you don't change the way you do business.
exactly. So that's why it's a combination of a reduction, but it's also you're gonna have to re-examine how some things are done. I'm not an administrator. I was just a teacher. So I was on the bottom of the pool on that. Was like, it's difficult for me to get into the administrative side of things. But the big concern, and Ross alluded to it, sometimes exploded to it, is that we have to put forward a budget that will pass. And I don't want to come back because if we make quite frankly, if we make a significant cut here, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Then I'm down to a freaking $1 or $10 or $1,000 for every gambler. Because I know what it takes to run a government. I know what it takes for a government to function. And there's a limit. You can only go so far and that's it. Then it's not, okay, we can adjust, we can do this, we can do that. No, then we can't do this. We gotta drop this, and drop that. And I think we go beyond what we're talking about today, that's where we're gonna be.
Amanda?
So no one's really mentioned the fact that this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy cycle, right? You disinvest in your school system and people choose not to move into town or choose to remove their kids from the school, which then just leads to more disinvestment and aging of the town, a population that cannot take care of itself or support itself for the long term, right? We need to, our school, as someone who's about to pop out a baby in 5 weeks, who wants there to be a school system for my child to attend that is a quality school system like the public education that I got for K through 12. I want there to be a school system for them to go to. If we keep hurting our school system, it's going to harm our town in general. We want families to want to move here, and you need to have a good school system in order to do so.
Which,
I would also say, as it relates to administration, not all of it is within our control, right? And I am no expert on state statutes for Board of Education, but the regulations and demands that our school systems have to meet now are much higher than they were years ago, right? There are that's why we have so many administrators to try and keep up with a lot of the bureaucracy that is necessary to make sure that our children are getting a good education these days. So I'm very passionate about education. I believe that education is the root of success in this world today. And I'm very concerned about us trying to harm our school system by cutting too much money out of that budget.
and I agree with you 100% with everything that you said, but by the same token, we did a lot with the promise that you build it and they will come, and there is no concrete actionable plan to bring in more students with what do we do when we don't get them to reduce costs? And we do not have a plan on, to bring in more business that's got, deadlines and timelines on when that's going to happen. So if you're not bringing in more students to bring in more revenue, you're not bringing in more businesses, then something does have to give at some point. And I don't know what else to say, because this has been building for a while and it's come to a head now. And it's come to a head without our thoughtfully considering it and acting in advance. So this is usually what happens when people don't feel a sense of urgency and don't feel a need to listen to the public and try to get out ahead of what's going on. So again, I don't know what the answer is, because a lot of it involves a lot more dialogue than we have the opportunity to do within here, and nobody has really taken the bull by the horns and started that. And I'm not saying it's the board, but I'm saying collectively, as leaders in this town, it's something all of us have not done, and so we're here. And I don't know anything else you can do at this point, the way we do the process, other than cut the budget and agree at a certain point that this ends here, we're not doing anymore. Because I agree with you, you cut too much, you'll screw the school system. I come from, my sister works in the Department of Developmental, used to be the DNR.
Yeah.
She's an advocate. And Department of Developmental Services, I believe. And she's an advocate. My father was an English teacher. I studied to be a teacher. I just never did. I got my certification, my master's in it. So I fully appreciate it. I'm a product and fortunate enough to have had a good education myself. So I agree with you 100% in your statements, but it still doesn't answer the question of, it's not going to end if we either don't say it's not going any lower, or you make some cuts and say it's not going lower than that, because of the size of the margin that we have.
Well, we did jump into this conversation without asking Jim or Kristen if there were any changes to their anticipated expenses for next year. And I'm doubting there are any, but we just should ask.
I can share, but there is a hand up, so I don't know if we want to.
So whose hand?
Ashley Pajoli has her hand up.
Yes.
Hi, I'm not, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, As a parent and a Board of Ed member, and I'm new to the Board of Ed, but I want to kind of mimic what Amanda was saying. As a town, what do we have to offer besides our education? I think it's going to create a domino effect. It's going to decrease home and property values. I do understand what you're saying. I do think we have an issue. I do think some cuts can be made, but you're asking a big ask, and I don't think it's been fairly done on the town side either. So I'm just asking, I think you're looking maybe for an immediate answer, like this is a magic number. And maybe we need to do that, think of that on the town side also.
Yeah, I would say what the town has to offer is a unique culture that you don't necessarily have at a lot of other towns. And it's, in my view, maybe different for others, very much driven by the schools that kind of bring people together. So you lose that, and I think you lose a lot of what this town kind of means. I came back here because of that. I would leave here if we didn't have the town, if we didn't have the school. And I grew up here, my entire family's here.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. So I'm pleased to say that I put this thing forward to elicit this particular conversation because it's important to everybody understands what it is that we're dealing with and what the impacts are. And I appreciate everyone's input on here, and just based on my motion, it was to actually generate the discussion. So based on your comments and everything else, and I also feel that everybody's got to take a bite in the hurt on this thing, and it shouldn't just be the Board of Ed. I would amend my motion to a reduction of the Board of Ed ask by 200,000.
Does that include the 55 or no?
No, that's separate.
That's separate because that's revenue. So that doesn't show up in the number, but it shows up in the mill rate.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's simply, my motion was simply based on the Board of Ed. So we still have the town to deal with, and we also have,
So you modified your original motion then,
correct.
so that you, just to make it simply a $2,000 reduction.
No, 200,000.
$200,000,
I
sorry.
wish I could say 2,000.
No, $200,000 reduction of the Board of Ed's current ask. So it goes from, let's see, the current ask is 17,082,903, I believe. So we would reduce that by 200,000. And does somebody have a calculator so I don't screw it up?
I don't have the number in front of me.
16,882 with it.
No, that was the,
You have to take into consideration also, no, you don't. No, you don't have to take consideration. So I can give you that number. Give me 1 second.
so this will be the 17,082,903 minus 200.
But can we ask Jim or Kristen if they have any?
No, we're in the middle of this question and then we'll move on to them. I want to just get the answer to this and we will move on because we still have the motion on the floor.
Give me
I would-
1 second.
That weren't. I mean,
Why would you feel that if you can change one, you need your, why would one answer change the other? There's either a reduction that the selectmen can make and the Board of Ed can make, and they should be separate of each other. They shouldn't be interdependent. You shouldn't do percentages.
We didn't ask Kristen yet if there were any changes.
Changes in estimate.
She might have wanted to give you 250.
Yeah.
Well, hi again, everybody. So let me kind of paint the landscape of where we're at right now. Based on end of the year PPTs, we have a special ed reduction due to an outplacement that has moved out of district, no longer with us, for $100,302. So that is a zero impact to kids. I'm going to start there. From there, we are talking about positions. We could reduce one vacant paraprofessional position that, not for lack of trying, we haven't been able to fill. If we get into a pickle though, and that's for $67,172. If we get into a pickle next year, I just want to remind everybody what the landscape is so that Dave is also very clear, right? That if we are in a situation where there is a need in special education, we come forward for the ask. So if we have a child move into district that needs a one-to-one paraprofessional, we may be having to ask for that position back. I just want to paint that landscape, okay? Another potential option would be to cut an administrative assistant position at Bolton Center School that is currently vacant due to someone resigning like within the last month. And that totals $85,062. So hang on, I got to pull up my Excel spreadsheet and do these numbers for you.
What's the way of it? Amanda, you taking those numbers down?
Yeah.
All right, so again, I'll just review the numbers. $85,062, $67,172, and $100,302. So if somebody can do that math.
2,536.
Correct.
I'd be hesitant to include the one for special ed because that comes and goes. That's kind of like noise in the signal. It's not a permanent change that can go up and down.
Wait, what, Ross?
You're removing a paraprofessional that you don't happen to need at the moment who can come back as a need later on and then you'll ask for the money. That's not the
Well,
same.
That's if a change occurs. It may not occur. I'm just reminding everyone what our agreement is, that we don't budget placeholders. And right now we can't fill the position. And Ashley's brought this up before about unfilled positions that we cannot fill.
Kristen, I'm sorry, can you repeat the $62,000 number? What was 62,000?
67,000. So let me go over it one more time. $85,062.
Yep.
67,172 and $100,302.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
252,536.
Possibly.
Oh, right, but I'm
Because,
just adding them
no,
together.
because if the need comes back, then we have to, supply that money. So that's typically has come out of what?
Or if there's
What do we typically, Jill, answer?
Right,
but if there's money in the budget, they can get it from, there may be money in the budget where they could get it from if the need arises. It's only if they.
Other areas, yeah.
It's
Correct.
only if they can't meet that need that they would have to come back to us.
But also, the goal would be to also find some efficiencies. I think we have to. So I think we could find some efficiencies, we have to be able to cover a risk like that.
So what, these are, I understand that these are projected reductions, correct, is what you're saying?
These are concessions if we were to make
The two
these cuts.
Yeah, I'm suggesting to you what I would be suggesting to the Board of Education
Thank you.
Just to give some context.
Thank you.
to give context.
Thank you, Kristen.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a give back.
So the number is 252,536.
Correct.
Thank you.
Rodney, does this conversation include the capital budget?
No.
Yeah, we're gonna move through them all, do the capital budget, go to the dental plan money left over, go to what the selectmen have to
All right, so
offer.
It'd be my preference not to vote on them individually as,
you,
It is a bigger.
yeah, I'll withdraw my motion because now we have a basis
To start.
work forward to get a completed budget. So I'll simply withdraw my motion. Second one. Thank you.
All right, motion withdrawn. So then we can go back to the other discussion that you guys want to have.
so this, I would ask the same question of Jim. Do
Right.
you have either savings you're willing to give us for next year or ideas of where we would cut where the Board of Selectmen would cut if the Finance Committee made a cut to our budget?
I don't have anything that we can cut that's not going to affect services to town residents.
And what would those services be, Jim?
Yeah, let's start.
I mean, it really would depend on the cut to, you know, to the Board of Selectmen. I mean, you know, meaningful cuts would be things like trash removal, no more resident state troopers. I mean, I don't, it would really hurt. You know, do we cut, the rides that we give seniors to doctor's appointments? I mean, it really is gonna, you know, it really would depend on how much money we would need from the Board of Selectmen's budget. And then we would have to try to look at that and see what would hurt the least.
Can you put dollar values on those, Jim?
Not
Trash is around 300.
Yeah, Jill can probably help a little more. Well, we just paid the resident state trooper bill for the year. It was $270,000.
So you either get rid of them completely, or I presume we'd share with another town if such an arrangement was possible.
Or you could go down to one resident state trooper.
Garbage is 300.
Well, wait a minute, though.
No, garbage is
in
more
a
than-
contract, so we would probably, since we're breaking the contract, we would have to pay a fee, I'm sure, for that. And then would
We'd
you
have
have,
penalties.
right, and would you have no service at all? I mean, what would happen with the recycling station now? Would that have to turn into something else? It could cost more in labor of the town's employees.
Before you look at reductions, do we have any give backs? We'll start with the easy stuff.
So, I mean, you know, Jill and I went through the budget today, with a fine tooth comb. And, you know, I did, as we promised at the last, finance committee meeting, I froze the budget today when the budget did not pass last night. If we do nothing more than what we need to limp by for the rest of the year, we can realize a savings of about $70,000 in this year's budget. But that means cutting programs that are already scheduled at the library and other things. You know, understand that doesn't come without a cost.
So cutting programs that would take effect between now and June 30th.
That's correct.
Thank you.
So the number was again, Jim?
70,000.
Okay.
So that leaves, I'm just kind of doodling here, but that leaves 77. If we start with, want to give back, we want to cut 400,000. And the Board of Ed is saying that they could reduce the budget, their portion, by 252,536. And that's leaves 147,464. And Jim just said that 70,000 could be reduced from now until June.
That's,
That leaves 77,400.
well, then we also have the other 55, because this is what,
Yes.
this is extra revenue that we're talking about, and it doesn't show up in these numbers, it shows up in the mill rate reduction. So that's where it's a little bit difficult. We can make a footnote to it in the budget that we recognize, you know, some additional savings at the end of this year that it's contributed to next year's mill rate. And so if you just did the straight mill rate savings, it's not going to be right. But if you throw in the additional, you know, revenue that we can move to next year, you know, the savings from this year that go into the general fund and reduce the taxes next year, then it does reduce the mill rate. This is where it gets tricky for people if they don't sit in on this, because they think, oh, you didn't reduce the, you know, the budget by much, but no, the mill rate's actually going down by more than what it looks like the budget reduction by itself. So you're almost to like 400,000 now.
Yeah, there's 20, with the 55,013, there's 22,451 remaining to get to the 400,000.
Personally, I don't know how I feel about taking $70,000 in givebacks that are gonna cut programs that people are already expecting within the next 3 weeks.
So what kind of programs, if we were to really talk, can we get to that level of granularity? What kind of programs would be in that 70,000?
Is that the rec department and the library?
So, I mean, we're talking about not opening the lake, right? Because we don't have a budget. So right now, we're, you know, if we had passed the budget last night, we would probably be opening the lake on Monday. So right now, we're not opening Indian Notch Park.
So you
Because
would delay the opening until the next fiscal year or until when the budget's resolved.
Right. And you know, it might be one of the things that we decide to cut is to not open the lake at all. You know, that could be a concession that we end up choosing. I know that the library has a program that they have planned, I think on the 24th. I got an email from Liz this afternoon after I froze the budget. You know, that's a program that, you know, she wants to know if she can continue to move forward. There may be some things at the senior center that we can't move forward with. I mean, you know, it's going to affect a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, which I think is appropriate. If you have, you know, a sizable amount coming from Board of Ed, it shouldn't all come from the Board of Ed. So I'd feel comfortable proportionately with 252 versus 70 coming from the town.
I mean, to be clear though, just in terms of like, for people that are listening, the give back is for this year. The $70,000 from the Board of Selectmen is a give back towards next year of
That's a give
unspent
back,
monies, right?
That's
Whereas-
Yeah.
Whereas the cut, the 252,536
Yeah.
is future looking for the Board of Education for next fiscal year. Same impact to the bottom line, just different.
Yeah.
One you're taking off this year, moving into next, the other you're taking off next year.
And well, just kind of a thought, like you're just got open discussion. Like you're talking about if we cut the events like to June 30th, that could be kind of like a wake up call to some people to say, you know, this is what the future looks like if we don't get these things resolved, if we don't get things, you know, things passed or, you know, balanced down. So that could be, you know, you know, useful or, you know, productive.
Agreed.
Yes,
So,
Rhea.
would it be possible to like just take a small percentage out of like the budget? So in other words, if we're putting $50,000 for a truck, for, you know, that money that we put in every year to buy a
For
big
Kappa,
for capo, could we take out a small percent of that, and another percent, so that we're still providing the services and fulfilling the needs, but we're not killing one line item?
I think you're better. I hear what you're saying. The problem with that is we screw with capital like this every year because we want to be putting a consistent amount of money away every year. And so that we don't have big blips in spending. And what we typically do is we come up with a big laundry list for this year. And then we cut out $500,000, $600,000 that gets shoved off to the future. It doesn't get any smaller. And then we just keep kicking it down the road, which is, you know, problems that we've done in the past. And you wind up with buildings like we have over here with the old school getting torn down. So we have to be very careful with items. I want us to take another look at them tonight about the capital. But I'm hesitant to start peeling off little pieces of expenses that we know are coming up. Because all it does is make it more expensive at the end, because we should be paying ourselves the money instead of taking out all these bonding issues. Is basically it. You put the money in there, you're getting interest on it before you spend it, and that helps with the budget. So I'm hesitant to really start peeling off little pieces of it like you suggest, because nobody sees or feels that, you know, the pain. Because, you know, like we're saying, people miss the language classes from the school. They're going to miss this. Everybody loves to hand out money. They hate to take it away. And people think that you can cut budgets and things don't have consequences. And they do.
But we have 20
Yes.
Just to kind of stay on Rhea's topic. You were talking about consistency, but is the revenue reduction of this year something that's been consistent every year? Or is this lost revenue of 750 for this year? And then, well,
We have it depends on our mill rate. This loss.
formulaic.
will we have the problem next year? I mean, if I try to paint the picture, right, look at like, okay, well, we're trying to address this right now. We're gonna get, let's say come back to this next year, right? Or we come back to
We
this.
do,
And we need no plan, we got no more revenue, we have the same revenue problem.
so,
That
Can I
we
speak to
have,
that?
right? Yeah, please, thank you.
One of the initial driving forces, and Amanda noted it, it had to do with the way that the state and the way they reimburse for motor vehicles above a certain point. Well, we've reached that threshold now. The thing of it is, it's a 1-year delay, so.
Right.
And when this budget gets passed, we're in that bracket now where we will be reimbursed by the state of Connecticut at a much higher level than we are now. So that, well, it will be higher.
By a mill. We were 10 mils over.
Yeah.
12 mils over the
Yeah,
cap.
but still, it's a 30,000 maybe, 40.
Yeah, it might be double what we're getting now.
So still, but that's a revenue source that,
If they didn't eliminate that completely this year, did they? I don't know if they got rid of that.
no, they have,
Cap funding.
no.
see, this is where we're at the mercy of the state.
Yeah, well, my point is about the consistency of the revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So were we consistent before, but now all of a sudden we had this big change?
It's,
So,
But are we gonna run into this next year where we, I don't know, let's say
this change is due to,
down to everything this year and the next year? There's nothing.
well, the difference,
precisely.
no, I'm sorry. There is a difference because this year, this budget is adopting not just modifications and what we saved and whatever, but a $730,000 absolute reduction in revenue. Once that is put into your budget process, it's there. You won't have that $700,000 loss in revenue next year. You're at this, your income level on tax is here. You won't have that gap to adjust for. Next year, God willing, we don't have a catastrophe, you will have normal adjustments that you normally have. But inflationary and generally inflationary and increase in.
Basically, the state formula hurts people if you lower the mill rate on real estate at or below what the cap is on the motor vehicles.
Yeah.
And you're a year behind on recovery from it.
Right.
So what happens here is until there's another, an assessment goes on, we're gonna go up, they're gonna reassess it, the mill rate will go down, and it's gonna start all over again. So we got 5 years of increases, and then we're gonna go back.
In the meantime, the state is changing how they
Yeah.
do this whole process, so. But for, as far as next year, shut my phone off, sorry. As far as next year, you're starting off at a much more, if you will, stable level than you are this year.
So the answer to your question is 5 years from now, you'll get the same mess because they'll do a reval. And as long as the property values have gone up over that time period, if we don't have a recession and they go down.
So if we start getting $700,000, we should put 400 of it away for the year that we're not gonna get any.
Well,
Essentially.
and then like last year, we saw the increase in revenue due to interest.
Right.
Because we did of $500,000 because the market had changed and like, there's so many things you can't predict.
Right.
Like, because a lot of our revenue is not coming from like commercial property taxes, from grants, it's from state taxes, from interest. It's so volatile that it doesn't allow us to really plan and predict what it's going to look like moving
And
forward.
also because our budget, even though it's a lot of money, is relatively small compared to the outside forces that act on it.
Yes. Where in a larger community, that force would be a minuscule impact on their budget,
Right.
ours is significantly greater. And that's unfortunately, that's the issue you will deal with as long as you have to put budgets together. There is no magic to that. I mean,
Unless you could just.
historically, we've had these difficulties, but on average, if you will, historically, we have managed to keep this a relatively balanced situation unless you've had one of these giant hiccups come in. But I can't predict the future. I can only talk about the past and
Jim, have we heard on the senior center grant?
That's what I was trying to ask. This,
We have not.
Okay. So we've talked about Board of Selectmen, generally speaking, Board of Ed, revenue increases, anything on the fire department? What are some of the big asks that we have there?
And now, do you want to go through
We
capital?
already moved the roof out. The roof has been moved to load zip. And so was the town hall doors off the capital plan.
Is there any other opportunities in there, Jim, to move stuff off capital to LoCIP? Because that was one of the things that we discussed, and I just want to, go over that again, because we had like 57,000 from FY 24, 57,406 from FY 25, and Jill, I believe you said we had about 200,000. And just for folks who are listening, LoCIP is a grant from the state. It's for local capital improvements. It's money, we just get a grant from the state, and there's certain things we can use it on. And so there's ways that we can move certain things from capital improvement. Our capital budget have it covered by this, and so it reduces our spend.
examples have been the addition to the town garage, the building for the buildings and grounds, all that came from these funds instead of out of the normal tax revenue.
How much float zip are we currently rolling over, Jill? After taking out the 58 that we already allocated?
So with LoCIP, you can't use it for vehicles. It's only capital improvements. And Jim last time took out everything that we could possibly use.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at what we have in the capital reserve, and there's the majority, we cannot use it for.
And it can't be used for the school, capital projects at all.
Yes,
That's what, 400,000 is the HVAC.
right. Yeah, no, you can't. That would make things a lot easier, but no, it's not allowed.
Yeah, just everything I'm looking at, you can't, that's in the capital reserve, it cannot be used for.
Yeah, we've already taken everything out that we could possibly, get done with LoCIP entitlement funds.
From the capital, there was no capital in our regular budget that we could use float zip for, right? Like,
It's only capital reserve. You can't put it capital. It's gotta be under, I believe it's 20,000 could go into capital improvements, which could go into the regular general fund budget for the town. But if you don't use it, you lose it. It's like any other budget in the general fund. If it's not in capital reserve, which is another fund, it will go back into the surplus at the end of the year, but we have zero in capital improvements for next.
Right, and the other thing, I think your question, Amanda, was, is there anything in our regular budget that we could consider using LoCIP entitlement funds for? The answer is no, because it has to actually appear in our capital budget. That's why we were so careful about making sure that all of the things that we have planned for current and near future were in our capital plan, so that we can potentially leverage LoCIP entitlement funds, especially for some of our bigger capital projects.
right, thank you.
So that, we've exhausted our opportunities to remove things from the capital budget and use LoCIP entitlement funds. And I think that was the chairman's question.
Not mine, but yeah, I guess it was mine and a couple other people's, yes. Losing track, sorry. So the other thing I had a question to, Jill, you and I talked about, and this is more of a selectman's question, is we have that leftover monies from that old dental plan that's defunct, and I think to the tune of $190,000. And that would be a one shot if it's allowable to do, to use, to somehow use that to either be moved to offset next year's, it's recognized it as revenue that's offsetting next year's expenses. It's only one time. I don't know, but I just want to have that discussion, is that I know the selectmen would have to act on it.
Yeah, and since you brought it up, it's on something like that, rather than use it as all as a one-shot deal. If we consider that, I would spread it out over like 3 years, if we're 50. Why? So that it's an additional revenue for next year and the year after that. I mean, that's a thought, I'm just bringing it up, that's my
We
thought.
only need 22 to get to 400, but.
You need about 30,000 for 400.
But. I mean, again, we have no idea what revenue is gonna look like for next year, so, and if we've got the issue today, I say you spend it today.
It's not a large amount.
I mean, right, 190, I mean,
I mean,
yeah,
I'd be happy as an individual to have it, but compared to the number.
So from a financial perspective, it cleans up our books too.
Yeah.
I think it's time to
So would you
move on.
use that instead of the selectmen's give back to shut
No,
down?
No,
addition,
I would do both.
yeah, but,
addition.
I mean, obviously. we-
and that would make that would bring us up to $500,000.
Yep,
And that would also clean up the books to your
Correct, we
point,
have to.
because it's
Yeah,
been sitting
yeah,
there for
yeah.
years.
Honestly,
I'm not sure that you're gonna get consensus among the Board of Selectmen to do that. There's been much debate about this, and there are some that are still on the board that feel that that money was taken from employees and they would like to use that to enhance employee health benefits in the future. So I'm not sure that you're gonna get consensus among the board to take that
the
whole.
board's gonna have to come up with 190,000 from somewhere else to cut, that's it.
Correct.
I mean. It's going towards, I mean, we can say it's going towards the cost of their benefits this year. I mean, it's in the general fund.
Or reducing their insurance next year, whatever
I mean,
you
it's not
want
gonna-
to do. It's a
Yeah.
payment towards their insurance next year, whatever.
So the point is, I don't think that this board can count on that money. This board does not make that decision, and I don't think you're gonna get, I don't know what kind of consensus you'll get amongst the Board of Selectmen. I'm just sharing that as a point of information for this board to consider.
I think we'd have one holdout.
Mr. Moore, your question, you were saying something.
no, I'm mumbling, I apologize.
I don't think you need consensus so much as a majority vote. So if there's one holdout,
Oh, do we need is it a different, because it's by ordinance, it would just be a standard majority vote, right?
I
Undo
can't
it?
answer, no.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's a simple majority of the board. That's correct.
And I also feel that it's one of those things that a little pressure works the same way.
And it's time.
Yep.
Because if you have the choice of doing that or trash collection or keeping the parks closed or something, I think you would get people to say, this is probably the better thing to do.
Agree.
For the first thing though, is before we go and ask that, is this something that we could legitimately use this money for? Financially,
So how would we, as this board, how would we recognize it as a 190,000 cut next year or as revenue?
I thought it
from
would be,
this-
I thought it would be revenue from this
revenue
year
from-
into,
Well, it depends on the timing of it. So,
Right. Right.
but, I'm not sure if that would be, I would have to talk to the auditor and see, because what's gonna happen is that will go from that fund that we have. The only thing you can do with it, according to the ordinance, is put it in the general fund. So it's the timing of that, putting it into the general fund.
so you have to get it done before the end of the fiscal year, correct?
Correct. And then where we would show it, I would tend to think that where we show the minus $50,000 that goes into the rainy day fund, we would show a plus of 190 or whatever the dollar amount is. We'd show a plus of it there. Now, because that would be in next year's. I would have to, I would want to talk to the auditor and see how it should be recognized. Because, well, yeah, I would have to really, well, I guess it would just be, we would call it miscellaneous revenue in our current year. So it would show up in the surplus for,
That's something legitimate we can do. From an accounting perspective, it's a legitimate transfer. I'm
correct.
asking, I don't want to, I don't want to come up with a bright idea that turns out to be something that it's not a generally accepted accounting practice, or there's something in our, charter or the state statutes that says, you shouldn't have done that.
I guess my question is, when we're making the vote as the finance committee, how are we
That's a good question.
wording that vote tonight was my question.
I'm on the deck.
I'm concerned that if you try to recognize that whole 190,000 in 1 year, you're artificially creating another problem for next year because you're already starting behind the 8 ball. I think, if you're going to ask the Board of Selectmen to consider that, you may really think about doing what Mr. Mora has suggested and split that up over a period of years into smaller amounts so that you're not artificially getting behind the 8 ball for next year when you're trying to build a budget.
And that addresses your comments. Yes.
I just started.
How does it go? How's it going?
It's curling.
At times you don't have that revenue and have a chance to wean yourself off of.
And then you could do the amount we need, like 50,000 or whatever, to fill the gap now.
That was my suggestion, 50,000.
Be 63 per year. Divided by 3.
That would get you to your 400 plus.
450.
That gets us to 7.13.
We're at 377,549, right?
Yeah.
Plus 63.
How much, I would ask, how much more would it take to get to 6.99
I think that-
on the increase?
That's Jill. She's
Wait a
like
minute.
25,000.
Too many people are talking, so I don't know what you're trying to ask me. I'm sorry.
Joe?
Yep.
How much would we have to take to get to 6.99% increase
In the mill rate?
instead of the 7.13 that you had said earlier?
Okay, give me 1 second and I'll.
200?
So
If we just add,
I have to back up that, when I gave you that last percentage, that was a decrease in the Board of Ed of 200,000? Was that what that number represented? Because we've talked about so many numbers now.
it was an overall 400K cut.
We're going.
So
Not from the Board of Ed?
No,
The original math that you gave us originally.
so I think we take 1/3 of the 190, which is 63,000, which would get us to 440,549. That'll get us below a 7% increase. I think.
What'd you say, 60?
63.
63, it's 190 divided by,
So-
That's to the 3084 mill rate. Correct? That's to that mill rate, not to the 3274 they adopted last year.
correct.
The effective mill rate, the one it should have been how we had the correct information. Because that's the one everybody's concerned about.
And so we still didn't get an answer on how we would recognize that 63 or how we would vote on that 63.
I know.
I think it would be as revenue
I think we should do it as revenue.
in FY 25.
Yeah, you have to release the balance sheet, so it has
And
to be
so the
revenue.
selectmen are gonna have to have a special meeting and get it done.
We can add it to next
Yes,
week's
You can add it to
agenda.
our next week's meeting.
And I'll-
To have it done before the referendum.
Then you can take us off of those, you can take the wetlands off then, because that's gonna be a long meeting. As we move from this last one, which turned out to be long, to the 17th.
So I'll make a motion to recognize an additional $63,000 in the FY 25 revenue for FY 25 revenue.
Second, you want?
From the what fund?
We can't say.
Oh.
That's the Board of Selectmen stuff.
Right.
We're just recognizing the industry revenue.
And then you know what we talked about tonight.
So do we want to make sure that gets us below the 7?
Well, I'm trying to get her all the numbers
Yeah.
so that she can run it.
there.
So,
Okay.
but if you do that and the selectmen say no, now you're talking about a revenue that if they say no, you can't have it as revenue. So you have to think about the consequences of that. What are you gonna do with, where's the cut gonna be to the if If
Yes,
they
for
say
sure.
no, then what happens to that in revenue that you, so it's a little, you gotta think about that because
We're backing them into a corner, and by them, there's almost 50% scored right now here.
Then you're going ahead with your 7.13.
If we can't,
no. What
No,
happens?
because you want to set a rate, you're stuck with finding some way to get to it. If you don't do this, you gotta do something else to make the numbers come.
Right.
You're not being nice.
Well,
And you won't be able to do it as a revenue. If you say $63,000 revenue and now they say no, what do you do?
I think what has to happen is the Board of Selectmen have to consider and act on it on Tuesday's meeting. And if they do not act the way the Finance Committee would like them to, then the Finance Committee will have to have a special meeting after that so that they can figure out what's next.
which would be a $63,000 cut to the Board of Selectmen's budget.
Yeah.
Probably, yes, but
I mean,
I think I think that's the only clean way to take this action.
But the problem with that is that if you do it as a revenue in 25 and you pick a number as your expenditure, you can't change the expenditure number you set forth to the residents. So you can't say, okay, they're not going to do this as revenue because it doesn't make a difference in the expenditure number you're setting forth. That you're going to pick tonight to go forward with. You can't call it revenue.
If the budget is approved with that $63,000 in it, our revenue is gonna be short $63,000.
But you're saying you're gonna have it at a cut to the selectmen or town budget, if you will, for next year, 26. But if you're calling it revenue in 25 and you make the number that we're gonna present to the residents, it's not gonna have the reduction of $63,000
Right.
in it.
it's, yeah, 'cause it's not gonna have the 63, the 25, or the
The 55.
55, or whatever.
Right.
Correct.
So that's, we just have to note that there's another, 160 whatever thousand that's effectively being used to reduce your taxes
The mill
and
rate,
mill
yeah.
rate.
Right.
So can I ask a question though? If to Jim's point, if the selectmen take this up at their meeting next week and they decide to do something different, and then Finance Committee has to have a special meeting following that, if they don't follow what basically you're suggesting, then do you have enough time to get the budget together for the next referendum?
But my question is, why do we have to have a special meeting? Because we've made our decision. We don't tell them what to do. We tell them to make it happen, these numbers happen.
But you, in essence, I'm just playing devil's advocate here for you, okay? In essence, the Board of Selectmen has to make that determination, to Jim's point before. If they do not, then you do have to have a special meeting because your motion isn't including, well, then they have to reduce their budget by 63,000 or whatever it is.
That's correct. Kristen's
Thank you.
right. That's exactly it.
Ultimately, what would happen is we're going with a certain expense. We're making assumptions on revenue. If those assumptions on revenue do not come true, that means unfortunately the mill rate we have to implement will have to be a little higher than we propose to the public to make up that difference.
But
That's
you're
where,
not presenting a mill rate to the public. You're presenting a expenditure number. That's all they're voting on.
but we're doing both because everybody's voting on the mill rate. They're not voting on the budget because.
No, they are not. You could change it and it has been done. You could say it's gonna be this if the expenditure is this, but you do not vote on the mill rate.
No, what she's saying is the public.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they look
Voting on the
at.
mill rate. They're
Yeah.
not.
I understand that. Yep, you're right. You're right.
This mill rate, well, they're gonna get very confused and be like, see, there's.
The Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
To vote to do what we're suggesting. At the end of the day.
Or you
Or
include
lose
in your,
credibility.
or you include in your motion, as I heard suggested, that if you don't do this, then you cut.
But we can't, is what Jill's saying, because the expense budget will have been set if we send it to referendum.
You know,
Because it will reduce your revenue, it will reduce your mill rate if it's revenue, but it will reduce the expenditures if it's a reduction in expenditures on 26 side. So it's two different things. So this is a tough one because
Comes out the same,
Recognizing it as
That's
revenue.
revenue. Right now, yeah. Totally, yes, understood.
and it comes out the same as far as the mill rate is concerned,
Correct.
whether you recognize it as a reduction next year or additional income this year used to offset next year.
Right.
It still comes out to the same mill rate.
Yep.
so if they say no, then what happens?
Then we would
They
have
say
to,
no, they're not gonna give you the $63,000 in revenue. Now
then
what?
then we would have to adjust the mill rate up to make up for that anticipated revenue that didn't come through.
So, yeah, because here's the
Not that easy.
hold on, here's another look. Well, I just want to give you another logistical issue with getting the ballots ready for printing and testing of all the equipment. If we set the budget now and all of the stuff tonight, tomorrow I put my other hat on and I go in and I finish the order for the ballots. They will get the machines programming to us, the ballot layout done. I send it to Atkins. We get the ballots Monday or maybe, and then we test on Tuesday. So if you then have a meeting after we've done all that, I have to go back. I have to go back and set the numbers again, no?
Well, we're gonna vote on a number tonight and that is going to be the number.
That's the number.
End of story.
Yeah.
Okay, so the I just want to make sure that we're talking about the correct thing, because otherwise, if change the number we actually put on the ballots, it ain't gonna be ready for election. referendum. That's what I just want to go, because there's that other little piece of how we get it out to the voters and give them the opportunity to vote on it.
Boss,
Yes, again.
it's my understanding that right to get to the 400, which would be a 7.13 increase on the percent increase on the mill rate. Okay.
The effective one.
And so we're short 22,000 to do that. We're short 22,051 just to do that.
With the 63 in revenue that we're adding, it's 440.
Right.
We would be over, yeah.
So I mean, but the other alternative is to find, I mean, that's all. If
Yeah.
they didn't,
Well, so there's a motion on the floor, which you seconded to recognize the $63,000 in revenue for FY 25, right?
Yes.
So do we have further discussion? Sounds like we beat the you know what out of that. Hearing nobody wanting to talk about it any further, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes by all voting members present. So it sounds like we have a number, and what is that number?
Well, so,
What?
we have to,
No,
we have to do the additional 70 and give back to,
did we
right?
recognize the additional 70? I
No,
think we did.
so I'll make a motion to recognize an additional 70 towards FY 25 in revenue, FY 25 revenues from the Board of Selectmen.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes unanimously by all voting members present.
I'll make a motion to cut $252,536 from the FY 26 budget for the Board of Education.
I'll second that motion. Oh, yeah, I'll give you a vote.
I'll second.
You don't have to, but you're gonna second it, okay?
So who's seconding, Mr. Mora?
No.
Ashley?
Can you say that number for me one more time, please?
252,536,
Thank you. I just want to be sure I get it right tomorrow night. Thanks.
which should be the sum of those three numbers you provided us with.
It is. I'm just double checking. I didn't hear it. Thanks.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes unanimously by all voting members.
So now can we recalculate the mill rate?
So wait a minute now, we gotta go back. So the new number for the ballot that they're voting on is just to cut the Board of Education by the 252, 536, correct?
Correct.
Right.
And the mill rate will be calculated with the other parts involved. But so the new number would be 26,598,982.
26,598,
982.
982.
All right, now, give me a minute. I'm gonna have to put in the $63,000. It's $63,000 of revenue well, $63,000 for the health insurance fund, and then a recognition of the 70,000 from the town of unused budget for unused expenditures for 25, correct? There's nothing
You
else?
also told us $55,013.
Yep. So the increase in the revenues, the 55, 13, the 70, and the 63.
Yes.
Okay, all right, give me a minute.
Okay, so I have so we need to do the vote on that, correct?
Yep.
So then I'll entertain a motion to adopt a annual budget for the town of Bolton to the tune of $26,598,982.
I'll bet.
So motion made by Mr. Mora, second
Sure.
by Amanda. All those, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes unanimously by all voting members present. I will fill this out now and top it off with Liz tomorrow.
That's a 7% increase.
We're waiting on the numbers to come in, but probably.
It's a 7% increase in the taxpayer ask, but that's the budget is not increasing by that much. So I just want to make clear that we're not increasing what either the Board of Ed are doing in their charter or the Board of Selectmen. It's just reflecting if you value your lifestyle here, you can, and you feel this is worth it, you can vote yes. If you don't, you can vote no.
Right.
You know, I'm just saying it's
That's
just.
for reevaluation year, we're at a 34% increase.
No, I'm just making the comment. I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't
Tough
do.
one there.
It's the way it is if you want to keep this level of services. You don't, then you can vote to your conscience.
We haven't gotten a percentage question.
Okay, so then we have to go on to consider and act on additional meeting date.
Yeah. When's the next referendum?
The next referendum is on the 24th.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. And good luck.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the next referendum is on the 24th, so we'll have to meet on the 25th.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we have a meeting on the 25th at 7:15.
Do I have a second?
Sure.
Made by Amanda, seconded by Bob. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you, both, sorry. And, abstentions, nays, passes unanimously by all voting members present. Do we need to have a meeting date? Did we decide about with the selectmen, don't pass that, or we're just gonna leave it?
It'll come into play in our conversation if the budget passes. If the budget passes and we're setting the mill rate, that's when we have that
Okay.
conversation.
I just wanted to make sure we don't need any further discussion. Right, then discussion on next steps should the budget not pass again. Because I heard firmly from everybody that this is the lowest we're gonna go.
No more, so
Do we mean it?
So now we're down, oh, that can't be right.
Well, you could get that
Reread it
grant,
now.
couldn't come in. So you never know.
Yeah, it's more-
If there's additional revenue come in, we can recognize that. I can't see, and
I say if,
I wanna comment, I appreciate what the superintendent did and her comments on very helpful, and also the town administrator, extremely helpful, and it helped us get to where we are today. And I think everyone, if you pay attention to what's happening, and what's going on here, you should realize that these are bare bones budget. They are. Whether you think about it, whether you like it or don't like it, whether you're ticked off with Board of Ed or with the Board of Selectmen, the bottom line is, these budgets and these both have to operate and operate effectively to do their job so that you, public, will be happy what they have and you will be able to maintain a certain level of, if you will, quality of life in here that you're accustomed to and that you deserve. And one thing I can say, that every member of the Board of Ed, every member of the Board of Selectmen in here have made every effort for that to happen. From the beginning of the budget process to now. Thank you.
And we're at a 2.8% increase in the expense of the budget, which is super low.
It's very low.
it's way below, it's about half of what inflation's been running.
I was
But I
gonna,
don't think
yeah, try to
people
make that
understand that.
point, is that
Yeah.
teaching people
Yeah.
about how we are actually like, we're not increasing like inflation is, we're below, at least we're going at this.
They just need a
But-
7%.
Yeah, if we can explain why is this the right number? And then the point of the next conversation is what gets cut next is how painful is it?
What if anything?
Why does is anybody going to approve this next budget?
You don't,
Yeah, the
that's
way-
what we want.
The way I also think about it from a Board of Ed standpoint is if we look,
Hey,
We
Rodney,
did 13.
13.
the way I also look at it from a Board of Ed standpoint, if you look at the trend of the amount that we have given back, and mind you, it's maybe 1%. So, you know, I like having 1% forecasting cushion. I don't view that as hiding money. I really don't.
No.
A lot of people think that is, but it's really not.
No.
I want to challenge anybody who's not off by their household expenses by 1%.
1%, yeah.
So, but the amount of that give back is kind of in line with this additional cut that we've had, which really goes to show there would be no give back at all next year, and
we
so
all
it's razor thin.
within our budgets, we all have to account for the most likely scenarios that will happen, not the least expensive. Because we don't have a real contingency fund. We have $50,000. That's nothing. If anything substantive happens in this town, 50,000 is nothing. If you wanted to be safe, you would need it to be something like 5% or so of the budget.
Mhm.
And no one would would be happy in the public with that money sitting there, even though it's a prudent thing to do. Because then you could say, okay, you will have your budgets at the bare minimum and you take as needed from a shared pool. And that probably would come out less, but it would mean doing something different. And then you have to explain, why did this suddenly get bigger? Looks like you're playing a shell game when it's really risk management. So it's, how do you do your risk management within your budget or in a separate pot? And we have to do it within the budget because of the way that we've decided to constrain ourselves. So
I would also like to share, if I could please, that, you know, I appreciate the discussion tonight very much. And if in fact it does not pass on the next try, I will not be here after that, but I would be remiss if I did not share with you that the recommendations that the new superintendent, David Caruso, will need to bring to the Board of Ed will be a reduction in positions and programs for children. And that hurts public education and most of all, hurts kids. Thank you.
thank you.
And I think most of us recognize that. Appreciate your comments.
Yeah. So again, it gets down to next week. If it doesn't pass the week after next, what do you want to do? When we have to come here, we have to meet, we have to set a budget. Will it be 26,598,981 instead of the 982 of tonight? Or are we gonna waste a Should say waste, spend another 2 or 3 hours going over the same stuff again.
I'd be looking for additional revenue, that's it. I'm telling you where I feel right now, and anybody wants to call me and comment on it, bring it on.
No, so I'm just, again, I just like a roundtable if anybody feels comfortable in, in commenting on it.
I'm commenting on where I would go next.
Yeah,
Honestly, I would probably go with the capital budget. I would go, look at the firehouse, the hydraulic cutters. But that's a safety item, so,
Yeah.
it's a little.
You can't touch the operating budgets anymore.
Right.
You're right, the only thing you can touch is capital,
Is
that's
capital.
another, you're right.
So that's probably where I would go, but it's, it's a little contentious because it's safety related.
Right.
Amanda, any thoughts?
No, I'm in line with what we're saying.
So $1 off next time, or the, something on the
I
capital.
just don't think that's.
Or some, if there's possibly any additional revenue.
Right, that's the other side.
Revenue, possibly one relatively small item in capital. And other than that, it sounds like $1 cut.
Yeah.
Rhea,
I'm for that.
Tyler? Oh. Yeah, it doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong answer.
No,
Don't, I used to, it's just like peer pressure. Right. Jill's got her hand up. Jill,
So the new mill rate would be 32.97.
$32.97. Right. Okay. Let's see.
7.0.
Next on the agenda, new business. We're not gonna do anything under new business. So I'll entertain a motion for adjournment because this is a special
go
meeting.
for it, Amanda,
So moved.
second.
Okay, then I will call us adjourned at 8:59.